really inspiring and exciting work for a place that's engaged in the idea of what community participation means. So, thank you, Zach. I think you just need to.
I'm live.
You're live.
I'm going to just talk while Nina sorts this out. Hi.
Hey.
How are you guys doing?
I'll also. Oh, there you go.
I don't want to power off though.
I'll also thank you for being members of the museum. That's quite wonderful. I've gotten to know Nina really well, and it's certainly lucky to have you.
Oh, I screwed up, but here it's coming back.
Okay. So what I do, there's a body of work that's in that other room, and that body of work is not really mine at all. It's people that watch the shows that I do, and what I do is I work with them to create community-based or participatory projects. So I don't. It's a little unfair that I get to have my name on the placard because I actually didn't do any of that. All I did was facilitate it. And so you're going to be able to look at that stuff, but I think that it's probably better for me because I think most of you are not familiar with the stuff that I do. I think you might be a little tiny bit, and welcome. I think it's going to be more helpful for me to talk about why I do this stuff to begin with, because I imagine that's going to be one of the major questions that's on your mind. Why I'm involved in virtual spaces, why I'm taking a lot of time to work with all these different audiences. And the first is, when Nina says virtual community, how many people here are already kind of starting to fall asleep, or at least have a certain sense that there is, pardon the word, but a little bit of bullshit in that notion. Would you just sort of raise your hands to humor me? And now the people that were lying just now, you raise your hands. Right? So, but it is interesting, right? Because there is this notion of virtual communities. People are on the network. They're spending more and more time in virtual spaces, and that just means in front of a screen, imagining a lot of the characteristics, really imagining a lot of the characteristics of the interactions that they're having. They're typing words, they're seeing words get typed back, and they're imagining faces behind those words. They're imagining emotions, and they're helped out by smiley faces and all these different things. It is a different kind of landscape. It is a virtual landscape that is manifest in the interactions that you have with these objects. They're very different than the real kind of interactions that we're having right now, right? This kind of interaction is mediated by smells and textures and sounds and all sorts of different characteristics, and quite frankly, it's a little bit overwhelming. This room, yep. Oh, it's question time already. Yes.
Is it not virtual?
Denise.
Our experience? Is our experience not virtual?
I'm gonna hold that thought, and we can have like a deeper conversation about the semantics of the virtual experience later. But there is, at least on a graded scale, a difference between the kinds of interactions that happen in virtual spaces between the ones that we have just in the amount of input that we get. Let's just agree on that, right? There's very little input that you get from screens, and you actually have to conjure up all of the meaning that's coming from these kinds of interactions. And so the question is, for me, when you have this massive transformation where more and more of life is being lived, when some of you probably get pissed off at people when you see them in the street, stopping in the middle of a sidewalk, looking at their cell phones and smiling, and you're sort of like, what are you doing? And the answer to that is they're living. They are living life in that moment. They just happen to be living a portion of life that is not accessible to you. And that's really, that is what the virtual experience is. The question, I guess, that comes up is when you have more than half of the population not participating at an aggressive level in that world, and then a new kind of group of people that are overly participating in that world, what kinds of knowledge is not coming across that chasm? And I'll give you one example. One example has to do with death. So death, handling death in the physical space has been mediated by literally thousands of years of incredible culture and tradition around the physical manifestation of saying goodbye to someone. We have processionals, we have ritualized ceremonies, we have prayers, we have mourning periods, we have all kinds of things that are all designed and passed through generations and generations of undertakers, right? I mean, these are incredible wealth. They're just wealth things, objects. It's just an amazing amount of knowledge. When you get into online spaces, we have lost an amazing amount of knowledge there. When someone dies, I guess it's funny, but you know, if you have a teenage boy who dies, and his mother then realizes that most of his friends were in online game spaces, there's very little resource for her to understand how you're supposed to approach those people. And there's very little tradition about you know, this whole process. Facebook has whole protocols about memorializing pages and not allowing new posts to come in and things like that. Everybody's scrambling to fill this massive void. And so that's a little bit of background on why this is so fascinating to me and why I'm very particularly interested in why people come together to do things online. And then as a secondary feature to that, what makes people feel online? Why do people feel? What do they feel about? And is there actually some sort of a craft or emerging discipline in shepherding emotion? Right? And that's sort of what a lot of these kinds of disciplines are. That's what an undertaker does. They shepherd emotion in physical spaces around very different things. So I'm going to just sort of talk to you about how I got to this place. And trust me, I'm not going to talk about death the entire time, although I know. So, let's just see one thing here. Let's try that again. Who made that noise?
It was virtual.
Me. Let's see if we can get this working. No, that's a different input. I'm going to go past these. So here's where the story starts. So in 2001, I filmed myself dancing to Madonna's "Justify My Love," and I filmed it. This is prior to the video days, so these are actually kind of homemade, crafted, animated GIFs that look a little video-like. And I put them together and I put them online as part of an invitation to my 29th birthday party. And so I put them online and I sent them to 17 of my closest friends. And within 3 days, over 3 million people had come to it, right? So this was absolutely freaky, right? It was what we now call a viral event. That word had not been around very long at that point. There wasn't much for me to compare it to, but I was getting emails from around the world. My dad found out about this from a colleague in Argentina before I was able to tell him about it. I was getting emails faster than my client could download them. It was coming in, and they all kind of looked the same in a way, right? Hi, like, you know, you must have a lot of time on your hands. Like, you know, what is this crap, jackass? And they really kind of like coalesced around 4 or 5 major responses, but we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of thousands of emails. And this was like, you know, I didn't sleep at night. I was like, I didn't even know what was going on, right? I mean, it was so crazy. And then all of a sudden, my free website, supposedly, got a bill for $30,000, right? Because even my service provider, you know, in the small print somewhere along the line was sort of like, in the event that, you know, 10 million people come and look at your thing, there's going to be an overage charge based on the usage. So it was kind of scary and kind of wondrous at the same time, because what I was witnessing was this kind of network behavior, and this kind of network behavior that we only talk about in terms of gods of war and things like genocide, you know, where just all of a sudden large groups of people act spontaneously all together. And it was transformational for me. I quit my job and spent the next 3 years just trying to figure out what had happened, right? So in that process, I started, I had gone to school for neuroscience. I had a little bit of a programming background. And I started to teach myself more about online programming. I did more of these kind. I even did a How to Dance Properly too. I just had no idea what was going on here. And so I did a project every day for 3 years, including a bunch of weird little things like games. This was a game called Atheist, where it's a fully functional game, but in the middle of it I realized that I wasn't a good enough programmer to make a really great game. So this is just called Atheist. You can jump around and do things like that. And then, I discovered conceptual art at that moment, right? And I also discovered the power of repetition. So this was a Buddhist. This came very shortly after that. Exactly the same as Atheist, except in this one, you come back as a duck. You can just play this game forever. It's amazing. And then the third manifestation, everything good comes in threes. Anyone? Up or down? Oh, you guys are such optimists. It's so cute. I love it. Everyone, no. Wait, game over. Oh. So that's it. That's the game. So after a while, I was doing these projects. I was doing a lot of video and all these different things. And I had a message board on the side, which was growing in size, 250,000, 300,000, 750,000. It was a large group of people. And I started running out of ideas. And so I started asking the community there on the message board to start doing things with me. This is around 2002, 2003. And it was pretty wonderful. They got really, really good at responding to things that I asked, and also just playing by themselves. So by the time that this image came in from a user, this cute picture of a dog that had just gotten neutered, they wrote over 3,000 haikus for that dog. Just pause a second. Enough! So at this point, that initial thing, the How to Dance Properly, has over 120 million views at this point. Unique visitors have come to it. The website itself started to pick up traffic. I actually lost all of that, right? I mean, it went way down after that, and I was sort of swimming in the world of being freelance, which means unemployed, but slowly started, because I was aggressively making all this content. I started to pick up traffic, but no one knew anything about me at all, because they were all coming to these individual things. So I had decided that I was going to try to take all this stuff and put it into a show. I'd never really done a show before. I didn't really know much about performance. So I just kind of turned the camera on one day and said, I'm going to do a show. It's going to be 2 to 3 minutes long, and the show is going to be determined by the interaction with the audience. So the very first show, I kind of just mumbled around. It's quite embarrassing and awful. But I did it every day for a year. And in the process of that, I started asking my audience to do things. For example, at one point, I said, I'm sorry, but everyone has to dress up their vacuum cleaners. And we have 1 day to do it. And 1,000 people dressed up their vacuum cleaners. Which turns out to be a remarkably wonderful thing to do, right? And so I have to just pause for a second, and if you start thinking about what this is, right? So I'm asking a lot of people to do something, right? You can't just ask people to do anything. That doesn't work. I found that out very resolutely by asking them to do a lot of very stupid things. But you ask them to do things, and with the goal of, there's 1 or 2 different kinds of goals that are part of this. One is you want them to have a good experience while they're doing that thing, right? So if you design a wonderful project, they have an amazing time doing the actual work. And at that stage, your work is kind of done. But the next phase of it is that you want people who aren't participating to enjoy looking at all the results. So you have to factor in all this different stuff in the course of these projects, and that kind of sensibility is imbued in those projects out there. over time, I'm doing a very, very fast version of this, and I think I'm even going over time. And how much time do I have? Another 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Oh, crap. This is literally like I'm like in the first like quarter of an hour-long presentation right now.
We can sit here longer.
Yeah,
Here we leave.
you're just checking your watch right now. That's
We
awesome.
We're on Santa Cruz
I
time,
said,
it's
we
okay.
can sit here.
Well, right now, you're delaying us.
Sounds like they'll give you
So I was kind of like trying to like move it along a little faster. So I did hundreds of these kinds of projects, and the thing was that people kept on responding and responding beautifully. So the task became, how do we make these projects bigger and bigger and bigger? So on the way back from Spain, I had this idea of creating an Earth sandwich, which basically the idea was the Earth has probably never been an actual sandwich, meaning that two pieces of bread have not been perfectly opposite each other exactly at the same time on the globe, right? Thus making an Earth sandwich. You cannot refute my logic here. Okay? So I created this project where you could, a map would find you your antithesis, your antipode. So these, for example, right here correspond to, unfortunately, the Indian Ocean. And it turns out that the United States is across from water. With the exception of two very, very tiny, tiny parts of the United States, we are all across from water. So I thought the majority of my audience, 60–70%, was in the US. So I was like, oh, this is never going to get done. And so what people started doing, they started laying pieces of bread on the ground in tribute to the project with their different locations, and that started growing and growing. But then within a week and a half, I got this email from a guy. He was like, hey, I'm on the island of Fiji, and I realized that the antipode for me is right like 2 miles away from the consulate in Mali, in the African nation of Mali. And so I called them, and and surprisingly they seemed totally fine with this concept, but they said that it would cost me. So that was a non-starter, unfortunately. But then within 2 weeks, the very first Earth sandwich was made between New Zealand and Spain. And I unfortunately won't show you that, the video associated with that. But it was pretty incredible. Since then, hundreds and hundreds of Earth sandwiches have been made. And this was all done with geo-positioning. There's a video of these two guys running through a field in Spain, being chased by a dog. I'm going to leave you with this, and that is that there are certain kinds of projects, and there are hundreds and hundreds of projects, and you're going to see, if you just look around some of the different things that we've done with this newest show that I launched in April. But there's hundreds of projects that I've done with folks, but there's some that resonate like perfectly for me in terms of why I'm doing this kind of thing, and I'm going to just show you one. I found this piece of audio, right? This is in 2006. Somebody sent me this piece of audio. I Googled it. I could not find a source for it, no mention of it, nothing. And this was the piece of audio.
Hi, my name is Ray, and on yesterday my daughter called me because she was stressed out because of things that were going on her job that she felt were quite unfair. Being quite disturbed, she called for comfort, and I didn't really know what to tell her because we have to deal with so much mess in our society. So I was led to write this song just for her, to just give her some encouragement while dealing with stress and pressures on her job. And I figured I'd put it on the internet for all employees under stress to help you better deal with what you're going through on your job. Here's how the song goes. I'm about to whip somebody's ass. Oh, I'm about to whip somebody's ass. Oh, if you don't leave me alone, you're gonna have to send me home, 'cause I'm about to whip somebody's ass. Now, you might not be able to sing that out loud, but you can hum it to yourself and let it words out. And let it give you some strength to get through the next few moments on your job. All right?
So I'm going to
Stay
tell you.
strong. Peace.
So here's the thing, right? So I heard this piece of audio, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a perfect encapsulation of what I love doing and why I'm doing the stuff that I'm doing. He understands that there's an emotional reaction happening at a distance from him, from somebody that he cares about. He has the instinct to make media to solve this kind of, or address it in some sort of a way, and then he uses the virtual world to transmit that, and has the instinct that there are many other people that will probably also have use for this thing, right? And this is like a crystallization of the strength of the network, right? I mean, we are, in a fractal-like way, just blast across the network. Things that you think you are isolated in your experience, you are not. And in fact, the things that make us feel the most alone are the things that give us, or have the greatest potential to connect us to other people. And that is absolutely true. And so, listening to this, I was like, oh, we have to do something for this guy, right? This is an amazing thing. We have to say thank you. So I asked my audience to make remixes of this, because he has a great voice, right? I was like, well, you use the track, do something with it. So hundreds and hundreds of remixes came in, everything from kind of like big band style stuff to metal and all this kind of stuff. But one kind of stood out, right? One was remarkable, and it rose to the top download in all these music sharing services. And I'll play you a little bit of that track right now.
I'm about to whip somebody's ass. Oh, I'm about to whip somebody's ass. Oh, if you don't leave me alone, you're gonna have to send me home. 'Cause I'm about to whip somebody's ass.
Wait for it. So it's awesome, right? So this thing goes out there, and all of a sudden people are like, I'm getting emails like, oh, the minor league baseball team that plays in my town, like, just came out to this song, like, it played, and then it was like, the used car dealership in my town used this as the backing track to their ad, right? So this thing's like going out there and everything, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is amazing, and like, they're like putting together an album, and they're making album cover art, this is like, awesome. And so I said, I was like, if you guys do this and put this together, put all the remixes onto a CD, like, I will hand deliver it to this person. Problem is, I didn't know anything about it. There was no information, nothing. We knew his name was Ray, and his daughter had a problem, right? That was it. And I figured that there was, not very likely chance we were going to find based on that criteria, but I said, if you find him, I'll deliver it to him. So it took them a week and a half to find Ray. And they did it by just blasting message boards all across the web. And then finally somebody said, hey, I work at a bank, and a friend of mine at another bank told me a story about one of her friends there who got a song from her dad. Let me contact her. And so in a week and a half I got a note, and it was like, hi Zay, this is Ray, I hear you're trying to contact me. Which is awesome, right? Because you write back, and it's like, that's one of those emails that you write like 50 times and you keep throwing out. So you're like, yes, funny thing. No. But it was wild, right? So I kept on in communication with him, and finally arranged to fly down to Kansas City, where he lived, and meet him. And I just went to like a little motel for the night, and he would only agree to meet me in my motel room. And he brought like 4 people with him. Like, big dudes too. Like, it was definitely like a very, very weird scene, I have got my little laptop out, and we're just sort of like standing around, and I met him, right? And that's Ray, and he's a preacher. But I mean, he's all sorts of things. He's like a very, very dynamic, really interesting guy. But it was lovely, and he cried a little bit. Like, it was definitely like weirded out. I mean, if you just put yourself into his shoes, like, it's a very, very weird experience, Like, hundreds and hundreds of people have been spending hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours making something for you because you affected them in some sort of a way. And look how giant I look. Just giant man. Never really noticed that.
That's what Photoshop is for.
So yeah, I think that's like a really wonderful little encapsulation of like the reason that I do this stuff, and the reason that this exists is because there are tons and tons of people that resonate with that kind of stuff and are interested in, I think, the craft and the responsibility of taking emotion seriously in virtual spaces. And I think it's going to sort itself out regardless, but I want to be a part of it, and I think all of you should be too, because you have like a massive, massive wealth of knowledge inside of you to share in that. And so with that, I thank you all for being here tonight, and maybe we'll see some of you tomorrow. And huge, huge thanks to Nina for all of her work in putting this together. To be quite honest, I almost did nothing. So,
Well, but I think you can all see how Zay's intention and work around participation really dovetails